Hello everybody, so today we are looking at finally NLP, Natural Language Processing with Python, and it's going to be based on some recruitment website that I originally scraped using Scrapy, so you may have seen that earlier on in some other videos. So what I thought I'd do now is just give it kind of an overview to what I've done so far, and hopefully this will act as a gentle introduction without going headfirst into a ton of code. Some of the sites where they've got tutorials will just dive straight in and you're knee deep in code, and others will just give you really basic examples of one particular aspect. So what I want to do is give you an overview but show you several little segments that all form part of the bigger picture, shall we say. So I'm running Jupyter Notebook, and obviously I wanted to check. I had some issues with NLTK module not found, and if you've ever had that error, then it's either due to your path, or if you're running a virtual environment, then again, issues with path. And also sometimes even if you set an alias in your bash RC profile, when you use Jupyter Notebook or even VS Code, they don't see that path, so sometimes you'll need to still write Python 3. Anyway, so NLTK is Natural Language Toolkit, I think. Let's just check that. What does NLTK stand for? We'll get the official. I've seen a problem with using. I don't know if anybody else who uses. It helps if you put in the right letters, doesn't it? Before I start criticizing. Natural Language Toolkit, and I'm not even going to visit that site because of all the pop-ups. Anyway, Natural Language Toolkit. Obviously I installed that, but I only had to install that once, so I don't want to keep doing that, so that's hashed out. I was also prompted much later on in the code. I had to come back and install this, and I'll keep all the installs at the top, so ignore that for now. So the first live part of code, so import pandas, import numpy. I kind of do that by habit really on everything I do in Jupyter Notebooks. So yeah, just put space there. Let's look at the 3 or 4 things we've got here. So these are probably I did some reading yesterday, made a load of notes, and kind of tried to distill down what would make a good beginner project. And POS tag, part of speech, stands for part of speech, and that's where you look at you look more at the context of more than one word. How words give meaning, the meaning of several of more than one word. Porter stemmer. So Porter is the name of the person who invented this stemming technique. There's various stemming techniques, and what is stemming? So yeah, stemming. Let's just come down here, and if you've read at all about NLTK or NLP, you may have heard about stems and lemmas, or lemmatization, easy for me to say, and they're quite similar. But for instance, if you had these 3 words, deactivating, deactivated, deactivates, the stem for all 3 of those is the same. So it's kind of you reduce the word down until part of the word that you're left with is the same in the next word. So it's kind of you're looking for the longest common series of letters beginning at the start. Lemmatization, so deactivate, deactivate. Basically, that's saying that all three of those words come from deactivate. So lemmatization is basically, it's looking for a word that's present in a dictionary that the other words kind of spin off from. So that's lemmatization. And stemming. So stemming is just the longest group of letters from the start that it's got in common. Lemmatization is the one word in a dictionary that kind of spawns the others. Then we got word tokenize. And word tokenize, if you're familiar with Python, word tokenize really, it just creates a list of words from a long string or a paragraph of text. Simple as that, really. So then I had to do import NLTK here. You can see also I was prompted to do this. So quite often, depending on what you're doing, you'll get prompted to install. Effectively, it's another database. It's some some ready-made bunch of words and keys and values. Really, it's package averaged perception tagger. So yeah, lots of things which if you've just come from a background of Python and you're not familiar with natural language processing, then a lot of these words will be new. But rest assured, a lot of these things like average perception tagger and porter stemmer, they're actually names. They're just names. They're not actual classes or anything to do with the code as such. It's names of things that you import that really have been, natural language processing has been really going since around about 1960 from what I gather. So yeah, this isn't all new by any means. Import data from SQL, originally Scrapy. So if you've seen my earlier videos, import psychopg2. If you would do it using MySQL, it would be import MySQL connector. This is a function I've written which does the usual connect, creates a connection object. Then you create a cursor from the connection object. So you say connection object.cursor. Then you use that and you use that to execute SQL queries. So I'm doing select all from select all from the listings table. And then this is where it starts getting interesting. So I've made a list of words that I don't want. If the paragraph or the job description has got any of these words in, I want to ignore it. So DNP, originally that just stood for do not print. And res, that's kind of the result. So I've made an empty list because in here I'm going to iterate through each of the rows that I get returned from my listings table. And for each of the rows, I'm going to create a variable called BS. And what that's doing is there's a list comprehension and it's saying split the rows up, and for each word in that split row, if that word is in do not print, then BS. So if the length of BS is more than 0, that means if we've got some BS, so if we've got any of those are found in any individual description, job description, recruitment description, then we just want to skip over that. If it contains remote, so if the job description contains remote and it's not got any BS in it, then we're going to append that to the row. So ultimately we'll have a list of rows, and each row will get added to the list, and then we'll just have a list called res, which we can then do things with. So that's just res is basically a list of all of the job descriptions, but we filtered out any that we consider to be BS. Next, we're going to run that function, and the result is going to be called TS. So res actually ends up being called TS, and here I'm just printing, I've just randomly chosen the second one in the list, and I think the list is actually 92 items, so I've just picked number 2 just to get going with. And what we want to do is create tokens. So what are tokens? Token is effectively a word or a number or a symbol. So a token is kind of anything that's got a space either side of it. So a percentage sign is a token, 100 is a token. Well, actually, I say a token is a percentage sign and 100 are actually separate. So, but as you can see, we've turned all of this paragraph into individual tokens. We need the tokens so that we can analyze them, because as a big long string, you can't really break it down. So you need to break it down first and then try and make sense of it with POS, parts of speech tagging, also called grammatical tagging. So this is where we're actually trying to give some meaning to each of the words. Now this is where POS underscore tag, which is a part of the NLTK import, comes into use. And if you're wondering so all of these words are, notoriously obscure: exchanging, discovering, internship, independently, specialist, company, products, manage, music, events, building, further. So this is an events company that are trying to create some software, and cyber security specialist, manage. So you want a cyber security specialist to manage their products, comfortable working independently, taking the lead in matters related to security. So yeah, you can still see an original text there, but after each one you've got these things: NNMP, VBN, and what do they mean? Well, let's go and look at this. And if you go to guru99.com, pos tagging, chunking, NLTK, pos tagging and chunking in NLP, we've got, so what did we just see? We saw something like NNP, and a word that's tagged with NNP is a proper noun, singular. So a girl's name, Sarah, would be categorized as that. What else did we see? We saw JJ, didn't we? This NLTK pos tag is an adjective. So an adjective is a word that describes a noun. So large. So that's kind of, you could have large, small, tall, short, and so on. What else have we got? Let's go back, pick out a couple more, and then we'll move on. So we've got PRP and VBZ. Let's see if we can find those. So PRP, personal pronouns. So it's like hers, herself, him, himself. And yes, there we go. So VBP, verb, present tense, not third person, singular. Okay, so what was that? Let's go back and find VBP and present tense verb. VBP. Can't find it now. There we go, R. So this is the grammatical tagging. This is where you're trying to actually look at these words as a human would rather than how a computer would. And then what also we want to be doing is, so all of these techniques, the lemmatization, the stemming, and the tokenization, and part of speech tagging, these are all the most basic and the most common tasks that you will do when you're beginning with natural language processing. And what we want to do is we want to say here, so all of our word tokens that we've got from our tokenizer, we're going to pass those through a for loop, and then we just want to print the stems. So here, where we've got a word like measuring, we just want to reduce that down to, no, is that the stem or is it the lemma? Anyone know? It's the stem. Well, obviously you saw that here, but yeah, it's the stem. So that's the stem, and the reason we know it's a stem is because it's not actually a word that you would find in the dictionary. It's the longest common series of letters that appear in words like measure, measuring, measured. So yeah, because measuring would have an I after that, whereas measure would have an E after it. So that's the difference. So that's stemming as opposed to lemmatization. So I hope really I've just shown you, and if well, you don't need me to run it again, but I will just in case. If I could have got an error, then you could have seen me attempt to fix it, but it's all run fine, and there we go. So really, this is just a quick intro, NLP, and if you want to download this is on GitHub. I'll put the link in the description. And really, this is just dipping the toe in the water, really, with NLP and trying to make sense of text. And we'll be doing something a little bit more in depth next time, but really, what we've seen here is how to get the text, or rather the listings, so listings is the name of the database table, and each one of those rows contains an ID, a description, and a posted date. And obviously the description is all of the words and gobbledygook that you get with a recruitment advert. So we've seen how to extract those back out of the database. We've looked how to convert them into individual tokens rather than a paragraph of text. We've looked at how you can use POS tag, which is a built-in method of NLTK, to identify words as whether they're nouns, verbs, adjectives, and so on. And we've also looked at the difference between stemming and lemmatization. So I hope this has been interesting. If it has, then give me a thumbs up. If you think it's got nothing to do with web scraping, well, that's fine. Also, if you'd like to see just web scraping videos, then let me know. But really, machine learning is only going to increase in significance, importance, and job opportunities in the future. So I think to be able to use web scraping with a database, and then with NLP, i.e. NLTK, and other things like word2vec, count vectorizer, and other bits and pieces that I will look at in future, and you can obviously also find tutorials on elsewhere, then this is surely a interesting field which, whether you want to do it full-time or whether you think it's going to be replaced by cloud-based companies who just provide this as a service, well, that's worth considering. But I think for now there's going to be a big future in being able to write code such as this, and it's just interesting because web scraping really just gives you a CSV, and that's the end of it, and you give it to somebody else. Whereas certainly big companies, obviously they provide this as a whole service. So they scrape the data, they store it, they make sense of it, and then they ultimately visualize it. So we've gone from scraping to storing the data, retrieving the data, and this really is EDA, exploratory data analysis. So ultimately we may well end up doing some data visualization. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll be back with something very soon. So until then,